What are the elements that successful business leaders have in common? What values help assure success in today's competitive business environment? Join us as we explore the lives of some very successful business leaders.
McCoy's got its start in 1923 when Frank McCoy opened a small contract roofing business with his son Emmett in Houston, Texas. Within a few years, the business moved to Galveston, where it thrived. Shortly after World War II, they began selling a limited selection of building materials as a sideline. Emmett McCoy recently retired from the family business, and today it's run by his sons, Mike and Brian.
It was about 1952 when my grandfather, Frank McCoy, decided to retire from the roofing business and actually move out to California, and lived there until he died and left the business for my father to run.
So as a young man, my dad ran the roofing business and such, and we were selling materials as a sideline. By the early 60s, the supply side of the business just continued to grow, and then by the mid-60s, our building supply business was really the main driving force of our business rather than the roofing business. In fact, it provided most of the profits and such, and so we discontinued the roofing business and then began what we know today as McCoy's Building Supply Centers. One little interesting side note of that, my granddad was still involved in an ownership position out in California, and my father wanted to expand to a third location. And I recall the letters that were passed back and forth. My granddad didn't really want to get into debt to expand the business while my father did, and so my dad decided that he would go ahead and borrow the money and start what is now McCoy Corporation that runs all of our retail stores and such.
Emmett McCoy knew he wanted to expand his business, but he didn't know a natural disaster would help him to do it.
Hurricane Carla actually hit right at Galveston. It flooded the island, certainly did a tremendous amount of wind damage, and what that means is a lot of roofs got torn off. And so Carla gave did so much damage and gave really us so much business all at one time that it was there where my father earned the extra money to be able to start that third store or his own company, McCoy Corporation, and allow us to go forward that way.
Absolutely. In fact, in many ways, our reputation was really established following that time, because there were an awful lot of businesses following that storm that raised prices and such. My dad was really strong about charging a fair price for both the materials and the roofing jobs that we had at that time. And I know that was really a very influential kind of decision for Mike and I to see, because certainly he was really provided the foundation for us to say, oh, we want to treat folks fairly.
Chuck Churchwell is Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for McCoy's. He's been with the company over 29 years.
You know, in looking back, McCoy's was a phenomenon. As we went into a community, we offered a different shopping experience. Typically what the consumer would find is that when they would go down to the local lumber yard, they would find the experience very uncomfortable. They would go to the back and ask for some nails or paint or even 2x4s, and instead of them doing the shopping experience, they would have the employee would have to go get it for them and bring it up there. And when that happened, immediately the employee asked, well, who do we charge it to? And that was not what the customer wanted. He didn't want to open up the 30-day account. He just wanted to pay cash and be on his way.
Mike, Brian, and their brother Dennis all had college majors in business, but they didn't start in the company at an executive level.
By the time we reached 8th grade, and I guess we were about 12 or 13 years old, we were working every summer in the business. Working out in the lumber yard, certainly working in the warehouse, sweeping the floors, whatever that took. I think we started out at about 25 cents an hour, and I remember by the time I graduated college I was earning all of $2 an hour, so life was getting good and going well.
I think it was sort of natural that we were planning to join the business. We enjoyed working with one another, and
absolutely,
it was a fun and exciting time. We all studied business in school, and so by the time that we graduated from school, our company had grown to 10 locations. In fact, I remember my first year out of school, I was the assistant manager of what was then our 12th location, as a matter of fact. And what an interesting time that was, and an exciting and busy time too. By 1978, we'd grown to 20 locations. By 1981, our sales had grown to $100 million in sales from just $14 million in 1975. That's a tremendous growth curve. By 1983, we had grown at the very end of the year to 50 stores. And so we had a business model that was working very well. It was predictably profitable. The business was something that we could duplicate, and the markets were ready to receive our kind of store. My father was really innovative in his business strategy and such. When we launched this whole do-it-yourself kind of business and such, I think that what impresses me as I think back on those times would be they looked at whatever the current model was and he wanted to make changes to it. That came in many forms. One would be the buy and direct. Certainly at that time too, even technical kinds of help he wanted to incorporate in the business. Using forklifts to handle material instead of just doing that by hand would be an example. Using a cash register to check people out more conveniently. Setting up our stores almost like a grocery store rather than a lumber yard, something that was rather unique for the times in those days. And we look back on that and realize that that same innovation are the same things that we need to bring to our company today.
McCoy's currently has 100 stores in 6 states. They employ nearly 2,000 people, and annual sales are over $500 million. But a change in the building supply business has created some major challenges.
One of the things that was happening about that time too, in the late 60s and early 70s, was the whole do-it-yourself boom in our industry, meaning that folks for the first time started tackling home repair projects on their own. And so if you take our strategy of buying direct from suppliers and offering great value to customers, and the sort of the society shift of people actually doing these projects on their own, was a really good match for our business at that time. And with that then we gradually started growing by store count and such. So we've taken our business model and in the late 70s all through the 80s and into the early 90s. We had a business plan that was very simple. Small selection of products, giving customers good value, good prices and such. And we took that model and just duplicated it with additional store openings and such. An interesting thing that was happening though, that our industry was really maturing and customers were beginning to get some things from our competition they couldn't get at McCoy's. More variety, more services there, better delivery, better financing options, you name it. The typical McCoy store would have handled about 3,000 items. We call them stock keeping units or SKUs. If you'll contrast that with some of our other competitors like Home Depot or Lowe's, they were beginning to build stores that had 20, 25,000, 30,000 items. So all of a sudden, customer was able to get a tremendously deeper product line at our competition. In addition to that, they had services that we weren't able to provide in years past, things like special ordering a product that we don't carry, for instance, or a more consumer-friendly delivery service. Those are the things that we all of a sudden started to notice that customers were liking and we weren't providing. This really came out in sales in that even though we were growing in store count, our average sales per store was actually leveling out and then started to decline by the late 80s and early 90s. This whole competitive situation that we faced was significant. Our competition was much larger, and on top of that they were growing and started to grow rapidly. At first, these kind of stores that we competed against were really in large cities, big markets, whereas most of our McCoy stores were in smaller cities and small markets. But that didn't last for very long. In fact, they started continually starting to grow into our markets in smaller cities and such, and we really did feel the competition.
Shortly before the invasion of their marketplace by large chains like Home Depot and Lowe's, Mike and Brian experienced a dramatic change in their personal lives caused by an unexpected tragedy.
The theme that was going on in our lives is, it's almost like a formula that would say, working harder, longer, and faster is the way to do it, and surely with time things would work out. And what we were about to experience in just short order is that formula that had been working so well up to that point was about to run out on us.
In the spring of 1985, our younger brother Dennis died in one of our company airplanes. It was an accident, certainly was sudden. We woke up one morning to find out that his plane was missing, and then realized that he did die in an accident and such. And you know, there's so much pain that comes from that kind of an event. And from just a pure business kind of perspective, I think what we reacted to it was that we needed to be able to just work harder and faster than we'd ever done before, rather than to take back and look and say, okay, what changes to the business did we need to bring? It was during that time too that motivation was really difficult. I needed to be working harder because we were without one of our key members of our family, and at the same time it was really difficult to get motivated during a time of such personal pain.
April 30th, 1985. I remember to this day going out to the airport. Of course, in our company we did not have a lot of layers of management, and what we had was a jet, 2 turboprops, and a helicopter to really move us around very, very fast. So we could get to 3 and 4 different cities every day, leaving early in the morning and coming home late. Well, this particular morning, it's 5:30 in the morning. I remember seeing 2 planes pulled out. I get into my plane. I'm sitting in the right seat, listening to the right engine spool up. I look out the left window, and I'll never forget seeing the headlights of my brother's truck coming into the parking lot. In fact, I guess there's always been said a little friendly competition amongst the brothers. And what I was thinking is, well, Dennis, I beat you to work today, because I was in the plane already getting ready to move out. I was flying to Laredo, Texas, and when I landed there, I received a phone call from my dad. He said that my brother's plane was missing. Well, that just was devastating. And as I came back and learned that he had died, it was taking our family that all lived together, all 20 of us in the same town. We played together, we grew up together, we lived together, we worked together. It was just such an awesome life, and all of a sudden, this 28-year-old man is gone. Well, I'll never forget at the funeral and seeing my whole family grieving, or at least trying to grieve. You see, we were raised to accept what happened and just move on, or fix it and move on. And this was something that we couldn't fix. Well, I remember us all joining hands in a big circle and looking around at all the faces, and there was something a little different about my wife, that she was grieving also, but there was just some sort of peace about her I didn't understand. And then 6 days later, it's 4:30 in the morning, and I've got to go back and start traveling stores. In fact, I never did go to the store to Laredo, so it's back to Laredo at 4:30 in the morning. And I remember thinking about this peace that my wife had on her face in the midst of grieving that the rest of my family didn't have. And what was it about Myra? And as I was thinking back, I remember that Myra had several Bibles in our office, and she had told me years ago about the Living Bible. And the Living Bible was written in plain English and easy to understand. And I had never read a page of the Bible in my life. And I remember going into that study, and in my hurt and my grief, just reaching out for anything, took that copy of the Living Bible, and being the macho Texan that I am, I tucked it under my arm and snuck it out of this dark room where she's sound asleep, because I sure didn't want to get riled up if she thought I was going to get religion all of a sudden. And I remember going out to the airport, and it's now 5:30 in the morning, and you see, we were able to get a new plane. We fixed it. And I know this sounds kind of coarse, but we were able to also get a new pilot and fix it. But what I couldn't do, was impossible for me to do, is get a new brother. And so I'm sitting in this right seat again, and the right engine's spooling up again. And I'm looking over to the left, and I'm looking out at that parking lot. And I'm realizing I'll never see my brother drive into the parking lot again. Whatever I could, there was nothing I could fix to bring him back. It was hopeless. So the plane takes off, and I open up this Bible, and on the front cover, on the first inside page, it says, if you've never read the Bible before, ... And I thought, well, that's me. So it goes in there and it says, well, we suggest you go to the book of Mark. Turned to Mark, read 2 chapters, not knowing what was going to be in there, read 2 chapters, and I closed the book. I'm now at 20,000 feet. I got the beautiful stars up above. It's still dark. I'm headed to Laredo, and I said, okay, I don't believe you're real, but I tell you what I'll do, God. I'll make a deal with you. See, I was great at making deals, so I thought I'd just make a great deal with God. And I said, I'll read this Bible from cover to cover one time, and at the end of that time, I'll accept or reject you forever. Well, I did. I read it all the way through. It took me about 9 months. And I just was able to reflect that before, I was always off of my value system. It was whatever I thought was right. And it was whatever, you know, every day we make 100 decisions as people off of some value system. Is it my value system? Is it someone else's value system? And so I just finished this book that talked about God's value system. I learned that He really did love me. And I learned that I make mistakes in life. And I was so grateful that He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die for me so that I could have this eternal life and be forgiven of my sins. And just accepting that gift, I became so grateful for the value system that He gave and this new life that He provided for me. And it has been awesome to go forward from there.
My experience was not unlike Mike's in many ways. Kind of 2 big questions following Dennis's death that I really wanted answered. One would be, does God really care about what goes on with His people? And I really did want to come to know who God was, and I had that burning question. And at the same time, too, the whole concept of getting to know people in a much broader way, the people of our family, people of our company, actually someone as close as my wife and children, too. These were all significant questions, because I guess once someone that you really love deeply has been taken away from you, you start to re-examine really what's important in life. And I had that experience as well. Our time during that time was not a lot of fun. Certainly I was watching some of the changes that Mike described going on in his life. And I can recall going through that time too, and I was really grateful to get to a place later on in my life where I could receive His love as well.
So, how did the spiritual transformation of the McCoy brothers affect their families?
When I said we worked 6 days a week, I actually would take off one Saturday every 6 weeks to be with my kids, soccer, with my family. But there was a very specific instance that happened in my life that really woke me up. My wife said, you know, Andy is going to turn out to be a fine young man, but he'll never be the young man God created him to be if you do not enter his life. And I remember looking just straight in her eyes, and seriously with fear, saying, how? You see, all of a sudden I realized I had not a clue how to enter a 5th grader's life. I was around, I was at supper, I went to soccer games, but to really enter his life, where adding value to who he is and who he was going to become.
The McCoys' new lives also provided them with a new approach to their business challenges.
But one of the exciting things that happened for both Brian and I is we looked up and said, you know, we've been leading this company by continually moving faster, continually trying to do more, and at the same time, remember, in the environment, all these huge competitors are coming in, offering more at less price. And so what we realize is that if we try to go just toe-to-toe, head-to-head, product for product, process by process, price by price, at the end of the day, we're going to get worn out and they're going to win. What we decided is that we have one choice, and that choice is our people. And as we invest in our people, as we add value to who they are, then out of that comes excellent processes, excellent procedures, excellent products that are going to be put in those stores. The creativity is unlimited. And when you put people first, what you find out real quick is that employees need much more than just a paycheck. Our customers need much more than just a product. Our vendors need much more than just another purchase order. People have needs that are beyond the obvious.
The path for Mike and Brian has been at times uncertain, and it's led to many changes, both in their business and personal lives. In spite of it all, they continue to fight the good fight. So, how do they define success?
You know, when the Bible says to love your neighbor as yourself, it's kind of interesting. If we're married or we have children or family, who's our closest neighbor? It'd be right there. And from my experience, it's been I've now learned through the years to be more giving at home. What's it mean to really express love to my family? How do I prioritize time for them? These are things that I didn't really know how to do years and years ago. I'm really grateful for that because obviously there's a lot of joy in loving and serving others. And so we're excited about having a company in which people are very important. And we're grateful that we've got it. It's a fun place to be.
I think the secret to our success is to continually be growing myself for the benefit of helping others grow. And some people ask me, what are you trying to do with this business? Be God's gift to mankind? And I look right at them and I say, I hope so.